No ways. Take a look at this. A hatchback in its natural environment. Unclad. How unusual. You didn't think you'd be seeing these around anymore with that compact crossover craze that's going on. But these B segment hatches are not going out without a fight. The market segment is still massively popular, thanks by and large to the Polo and the Vivo. Well, Hyundai have completely reimagined the i20, and they believe it's got what it takes to take the fight to the Polo. Only one way to find out. Well, dimensions seem a good place to start. At just under 4 meters, the i20 is similar in length to the Vivo, but it cannot match that of the Polo. Significantly though, its wheelbase and height is far superior, which bodes well for interior space. Of course, I don't like being in the rear of a car. I always want to drive it, but it is important when we are reviewing cars and they're telling you that they've improved the rear passenger comfort that we do test it out. This over here is my driving position, and have a look at how impressive the space is. Plenty of knee room. Because of the improved dimensions with the i20, they've actually scored 88 millimeters for the rear passenger legroom, and for shoulder width, 44 millimeter improvement, with the car being a lot wider. So that is nicely done. Headroom also ample. As we've seen in a lot of competitors now, they don't have individual seats anymore, so it can flip forward, but it's an entire bench that flips forward. So you do lose a bit of practicality in that regard. But the i20 is no match for the Polo when it comes to boot capacity. 311 versus 350 litres, and both do have full-size spares. What I do love, it is amazing to see air vents in the back of a car at this price point. They've also put in a tray for you to put your mobile phone in while you are charging, because there's one USB charge point here as well. It was something I really liked when I was in the Polo. Even at entry level, they had 2 USB Type-Cs. Connectivity is such a massive thing. Nicely done. Hyundai do have a pretty interesting spread of models on offer with the i20 range. You've got 3 engines, 3 transmissions, and 2 trim levels. The entry level is the Motion, which is powered by their 1.2 litre naturally aspirated Kappa engine that is linked to a 5-speed manual transmission. You're not going to be setting any lap records with just 61 kilowatts and 115 Newton meters on offer. But at just 12,000 Rand more to upgrade in specification level to the Fluid, which is the one that we're driving in, is really an absolute no-brainer. And I think this is probably going to be the bread and butter. This is going to be the volume seller. If it's an automatic transmission that you want, they've actually done a really clever thing. They've got a 6-speed torque converter that is linked to their tried and tested 1.4 litre naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine that is really going to do a way better job. I was stressing about the fact that putting an auto in this little 1.2 litre could be very, very frustrating, especially if you are driving up at altitude. It's producing 73 kilowatts, and the torque figures up to 133 Newton meters. And yes, of course, there's also turbo technology available with Hyundai's 1 litre TGDI engine that produces 90 kilowatts and 172 Newton meters. And you've got a choice here. You can either have it with their 7-speed DCT, dual clutch transmission, or a 6-speed manual. There's a 25 grand difference between the two, and from my experience driving these small capacity turbo petrol engines, the power range, that power delivery is so narrow that you really are going to be going through the gears. So I would always try and find that little bit extra and rather go with the dual clutch transmission. But at the end of the day, I'm not sitting in a turbo. I'm driving the 1.2 litre naturally aspirated. And those figures I gave you earlier, I was a little bit worried, to be honest, that it's going to be really it's going to struggle to get going, because the i20 now is a lot bigger. But what it says on paper and how it actually delivers it in reality is a big difference. I've been really impressed. It actually goes really well. Granted, I am down at the coast, which makes a big difference. I'm also traveling alone, I've got no luggage, all of these things do help. But I think what is also significant, if you stack it up against the Polo, on average across the entire range, it weighs between 140 and 160 kilograms less, and that is significant in a B segment car like this. But getting going isn't the issue with this naturally aspirated engine. It's the minute you hit an incline that it really does run out of oomph, and a little downshift from fifth to fourth isn't really going to cut it. You're probably going to be looking for third. So get used to the fact that you are going to be going through your 5-speed manual transmission, but it's not a bad thing, because I tell you what, the shift on this transmission is amazing, and that's something that you would never have said a couple of years ago about Hyundai. They really have come a long way in terms of engine and transmission pairings, as has their build quality, ride quality and refinement. In terms of the build quality, you know, I told you we're going through the gears, you've got to get this car revving, but it is so well insulated as the cabin that there's no engine intrusion coming into the cockpit. There's no wind noise off the mirrors. It really is solidly put together. But it's the ride quality that has really impressed me. It's fantastic. The platform that they're running on and the suspension setup is actually pretty standard. They've got McPherson struts in the front, and then they've got a coupled torsion beam rear axle, but it's how they have set the coil springs and the dampener ratios that really just deliver such a comfortable and refined drive. It is amazing. And yes, I haven't just been driving Miss Daisy, I've pushed this little i20, and it is so composed when you do drive a little more spiritedly. And on these bumpy roads, there is no crashing or bashing over any of the bumps. It just soaks them all up. I would kind of give it a thumbs up over the Polo in that regard. With the exception of the i30, and I'm yet to drive a Hyundai here in South Africa with a steering that I love. And all I can attribute it to is the fact that you have vehicles made for the European market in a different plant to the ones that are made for our market. And I'm assuming it literally is just a steering ratio and a setting that I believe they can change. Because what it does, it's not the weight of the wheel, I like that, but it does tend to feel a little bit vague, where you do inputs and nothing really happens and then it responds. I also find that it likes to track. It kind of holds its line instead of just waiting back to center. And the strange thing is that happens actually more at lower speeds. The more you push on, the better the wheel tends to feel. But these are little things. I mean, this isn't a hot hatch pocket rocket, so I really am nitpicking on this one. This third generation i20 is a significant step forward compared to its predecessor. And I'm not just talking in terms of how it drives and the overall package, but obviously, most significantly, in how it looks. Out with the boring and in with the bold. But as is the case with Hyundai's new designs, they can also be a little bit polarizing. Yep, the jury is still out for me on this one. From some angles it is sensuous sportiness, and others, well, it's downturned and dour. I think colour's going to make a massive difference here, and perhaps that extra 50mm in length that the European models have over our Indian built versions help the overall look. Now, where the motion derivatives make do with 15-inch steel wheels, the fluids run on 16-inch two-tone alloys, and its 170mm ground clearance will certainly suit our mixed road conditions. The blacked out skirting adds a sporty edge, and if you do opt for the two-tone, the roof spoiler and the mirrors get blacked out. I like the blacked out grille and the bumper design housing the front fogs, which along with the daytime running lights are standard across the entire range. In fact, what you see here is what you get across the range: auto halogen headlights and rear combination lamps. Perhaps some differentiation with LEDs for the range topping turbos would have been good. Now obviously VW has a distinct drivability advantage over the Hyundai i20 because they offer turbos across the entire Polo range, but where they cannot match the Koreans is when it comes to specification and price. You get electric mirrors all round, with the fluid models adding one touch up and down for the driver. Electric mirrors. The fluid then adds folding and heat functionality. Manual aircon with glove box cooling and rear vents added on the fluid. And you get this 4-spoke multifunction steering wheel with height and reach adjustment. Cruise control added on the fluid models. This really neat instrumentation cluster with its 3.5-inch TFT display, and importantly, this infotainment system with its 8-inch touchscreen, Bluetooth and voice control, with the fluid then adding wireless phone charging and the additional USB in the rear. Park assist as well as a rear view camera, these are standard. In terms of trim, this black cloth is standard. The two-tone models add red trim, while the range-topping turbos get artificial leather. Driver seat height adjustment is also added to the fluid models. On the safety front, driver and passenger airbags are standard, while the fluid adds side and curtain airbags. But there is no vehicle stability control on our South African models, and the motion derivatives have drum brakes at the rear. Drum brakes, wow. So as you can see, standard specification across the model lineup is great, but clearly opting for the fluid is a no-brainer. I remember driving the 6th generation Polo back on its launch in 2018 and thinking, oh my word, what a massive leap forward it was for the segment. All of its competitors were playing catch up, and at the time probably the car that was closest was the Nissan Micra. But the competition has caught up, and the more time I spend with the i20, the more I fall in love with it. I think the word that best describes it, substantial. Do you know what I mean? It feels like so much more car than a B-segment hatch. But Hyundai aren't the only ones that have come out to play. Recently launched super hot, the Peugeot 208, and from the same stable, the Opel Corsa. Both serious contenders. But like the Polo, where the Hyundai is going to do really well, is its brand loyalty. They've worked so hard to earn that, and South Africans love what Hyundai stands for. I am just wondering though, come 2022, the first quarter when the new Polo is introduced to our market, is it going to be another case of catch me if you can?